guys, I am 99% sure that I found what could potentially be the best plugin for making drum and bass music on the planet. This plugin is crazy. It literally allows you to just write an entire tune using just this plugin without like having any knowledge of any sound design or doing anything complicated. And you can see that I'm excited about it. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you how to make a whole tune just with this plugin. Or actually, it's two plugins, but we'll get to that. Now, if I got you curious, don't worry. I'm going to talk about everything that you need to know about this super awesome VST. And the best thing is there's actually a specific way to get almost 40% off on this plugin. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that later when we talk about whether this is worth the price. But first, let's have a quick listen to what I was able to create using pretty much just this plugin in about 2 hours time. Small disclaimer, you might laugh at the vocals. Don't judge me, I was just having fun. All right.
The fuck up, I got that big energy, 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 big energy. Turn the fuck up, I got that. 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 Turn the fuck up, I got that big energy. Big energy.
All right, so I think that for the amount of time that it took me to just write that, that is absolutely banging. And we're going to dive all the way into how I did that using the plugin. But let's first see, what are we actually talking about? So we're actually talking about two plugins from the same artist. They are both created by this really cool guy called Erb N Dub, which if you're into drum and bass, you've probably either heard his name or you've heard one of his tunes because he's been making music for over 20 years. He's all over the place. And he's also one of the people in the popular band Killer Hertz, which again, you probably know by name, but if you don't, you have definitely heard at least one of their tunes if you've ever been to drum bass live events, because their tunes get rinsed in every single set that's worth your time to listen to. And so basically the idea is that Erb N Dub has been making music for a very long time and he is a mega proficient sound designer. There's actually already a lot of his sample packs and his presets and other music related material out on really big platforms like Splice, and he has his own website where he sells loads of these and people are extremely happy with it. Generally speaking, Erb N Dub is known as just a producer of really high quality sound, and he has consolidated some of his most high quality sounds into a VST, or actually in two VSTs, which are called Hardware Bass, which I really love the name of, and then Reesebass, and I think you can guess what that one's for. And we're going to dive into both of them. And so essentially what these plugins are is they are what we call romplers. Now, a rompler is a software synth that doesn't necessarily give you that many options of tweaking the sound, but that has a bunch of really high quality samples loaded up. If you kind of, go back to like a long time ago, the Korg Triton is, I think, a good example of what a rompler is. It just has a bunch of really super good presets and then some controls to sort of fine tune it. But the idea is that the quality of the sound is already there and doesn't need that much editing, but you can play it on the keyboard. So you can play it in every single note and you can play it in progressions and you can use MIDI with it rather than, taking a sample and having to manipulate it in an audio channel. So I said one plugin, but technically two because, well, I'm going to show you what they look like. This is Hardware Bass and this is Reesebass, and they are essentially the same or almost the same device, except they just have different library banks, but they're by the same guy. They're all by Erb N Dub and they pretty much work the same, but they both have super extensive libraries. And today we're going to dive a little bit more into Hardware Bass because I personally think that that is the dopest. They're both really cool, but that one has the most high quality and versatile library. And we're also going to have a tiny look at Reesebass, but we'll do another video on the Reesebass synth somewhere in the very near future to explore that a little bit more. And so yeah, I want to tell you why these are so cool, and then we're going to use them to make the tune that you just heard in like a really short time so you can see how powerful both just this device is, but also how crazy the sounds are that come from it. And for that, we have to dive into Ableton. So I'll see you in there. All right, so we are in the finished project right now, and we're gonna be, in a minute, we're gonna be building this from scratch just to show you how easy it is. But first, let's have a look at the plugins. And so pretty much on all of these channels, I have one of these two. Most of them use hardware bass, and then some of them, well, for the Reesebass, mostly use Reesebass. I guess that makes sense. Everything that I've used are literally just presets, and they barely have any real processing on them. Yeah, there's some reverb and there's some filtering, but that's more in the context of the song. There is no real audio editing I've done to pretty much any of this. I've got some devices here because I want to show you what's happening to the sounds and why they are so high quality. But other than that, on all of these channels and everything you heard in the song, I haven't edited anything. It's all straight out of the box from these synthesizers, from these Rompler VSTs. So yeah, let's go ahead and just check out this bass hit here. That is a straight out of the box sound. So let's go and look in hardware. This is hardware bass, and this is where everything comes from. And this, as you can see, it's literally just a preset that I've picked. There are a number of controls here. I've changed exactly nothing about those controls, and I've changed pretty much nothing about either of these controls for pretty much all the sounds in this song. And I think that is also the way that this VST was built. There are controls so that it's not just something playing a sampler and you have some options. And we'll go through these controls because some of them are actually quite convenient. But the whole point of it is that everything in there is so plug and play that you don't really need to do that much. Now, I must admit, for me, as someone who loves control, I'm a total control freak, especially in music production, that was a bit getting used to for me because I like picking waveforms and, you know, applying reverb filters and all that crazy kind of stuff. You can't do that in here, but that is also what makes it great because it limits you in a positive way to just use what you've already got, and that makes writing a lot easier and faster. So yeah, basically what we have here, let's run through sort of what this consists of. So we have a list here, and this list is all the presets, and it is enormous. I did a quick count, and there's more than 200 of them. And yeah, they range from everything to nothing, basically. And the cool thing is also, so Erb N Dub has produced patches for artists, big artists, that are actually just straight the patch from here is what is being used in the song. For example, there is, one of them is called Disconnect. That's the actual patch that was used in Disconnect by Chase and Status and Becky Hill. And like that, there are multiple in there. One of them was used in Badadan. The other was used by Friction and is used in a number of Friction tracks. All of these are basically on a literal professional level. And so, yeah, basically, I think the first sort of 100 are all sort of bass hits and bass Reeses, and they're all just, you know, really cool sounds that'll fit into any arrangement, really, and I had a really good field day with that. Most of the sounds I used in the song kind of come from this section, but then when you scroll down, you can find some more interesting stuff. There is a bunch of whomps here. There is a bunch of sort of neuro-specific stuff, which is pretty cool. There are a good number of Reeses, and they do have the funniest names in the world. There are, like, I think probably about 20 or 30 leads. There are some stabs in here, and there are also drum samples, and we've used the drum samples in this tune because they are good. Usually when, you know, there's like just a couple of like picks and snares in a sample pack or in a preset pack, they kind of suck. But in this case, they are impeccable. They are good quality samples. And then there's some special effects. So in no particular order, let's run through some of my favorites from hardware bass and then also from Reesebass. That's strong. It's a stinker. Fuck, I really love that one. So you can just hear, like, these are super good. And then we have some more, like, creative ones. This one is called Poo Panties. It's still sick, though. Ooh, there's that. And then there's also some, just, like, some random stuff in here, but that does really hit hard. Listen to this one. I mean, that's fucking sick, especially with all the 4x4 coming up in drum bass these days. That has potential. And then, yeah, some of the leads are also just really freaking high quality. I mean, that's almost a song by itself. I love that. They even got the orchestra stab in there, like a super good one. If I could properly type on this keyboard, that would sound a lot better. But still, as you can see, lots of these are super thick. They're super juicy. They already are actually layered. We'll get into that. And they're just literally ready to go. You maybe just have to slap on some reverb and maybe some filtering, and then they are pretty much done. But guess what? You can do all of those things in the plugin itself. So let's run through the controls, right, that we have here. So we have here the gain. That's basically just volume. And that might be good if you want to automate the gain, because you can just do it within this plugin rather than having to grab a utility yourself or whatever your DAW uses. Then there is a built-in reverb. So let's just take, for example, this one, and let's just put some reverb on it, right? And the nice thing is, this reverb is pretty simple, so you don't really have to go and mess with all the controls. Getting reverb to sound right, especially as a beginner, sometimes is a bit of a difficult concept because you're not really sure like how the pre-delay works and all the other controls in here. This is just one knob, you turn it up and it's good. So we have that. We can even put some delay on there. Works perfectly. Once again, just one knob, making it super simple. And, you know, adding just a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay definitely helps make it bigger and, you know, maybe fit into the track a little bit better. Then there's this time button, which basically just tells the delay how long it has to take between the delay happening. And then, yeah, we just have a phaser and a chorus. In my opinion, these are not the strongest ever, but they do give it so that you can vary the sound and give it a little bit more of that sort of phasiness and give it a little bit more stereo width. So, for example, if we were to maybe, you know, grab like a Reese from here and we would turn the phaser up, you get that classic phaser sound, which works really well on these big basses. And the same for chorus, right? It just makes it wider and more dispersed. So these are just nice little effects for you to play with, see if you can get a little bit more out of the sound or make a little bit more the way that you want. And so then we have it, that's all of the controls there. The info button is it's pretty simple. It just takes you to Erb N Dub website, which you should check out because pretty much all of his products are really good. Then we have the ADSR. So the ADSR is basically the envelope. If you don't know what that is, if you're like really a beginner, let me show you the same thing on Serum, which you might be a little bit more familiar with. It's the attack, the decay, and the sustain and release. So yeah, you can make it so that the volume comes in gradually, or you can have a tail in terms of volume, or yeah, you can basically just shape the sound. I would say that I definitely like how visual, for example, Serum is, and you don't really get that in hardware bass, but I would say that it's also not necessary because the samples are already pre-programmed to sound the best the way that they do. This is only really if you have some very specific needs. Then we have some other controls that might seem familiar that you can also find in pretty much every other synth, which is you can choose whether it is poly or mono. Mono meaning that it'll only play one note at a time, because remember, this is a synth essentially, so we're going to be programming notes, right? We're going to have a MIDI channel with notes. And so, for example, what you can see here is in the tune that we made, I have two notes that are overlapping, which means I can't have mono on because I want it to glide. And we can do that. We can do that within hardware bass here. And then we can also choose how much glide we want in there. So if the notes are overlapping indeed, do we want them to flow into each other in terms of pitch? And so that definitely works really well for the Reesebassy things and for some of the more sustained lead sounds. And there's definitely a couple of those in there, so very convenient. Then we have a filter here, which you can see the cutoff here. It works in conjunction with this here, and yeah, I quite like this. I must say in my project now I haven't really used it because I'm just set in my ways, but actually rather than EQing any of the lows out here, EQ from your DAW, you could actually already do that here. You can pick a low pass or a high pass, and specifically for these sounds, both of these are actually really useful. The low pass being really useful because sometimes, especially in sort of the bass sounds, you just want it for the sub. Lots of Reeses are really nice to use as a big sub with a little bit more extra harmonics versus, for example, using just a simple sine wave sub. And let's say that, you know, we have this right now that has a lot of top end, but let's say like, hey, I really like how fat that is, but I don't want to use all of it because I'm going to put like a lead on top of there and vocals and whatever. Then you can already just low pass it here and we can start putting that cutoff down. Now that sounds pretty powerful. So let's same with this one. We turn this cutoff down. We put it on the low pass. That is pretty cool. And similarly, there's also the high pass for if you want to layer stuff. So a lot of these sounds are really good already, and you actually, I'll show you in a minute, you don't need to layer any sub bass under them. But let's say that you wanted to layer 2 of these sounds together. You could actually already just take one and put the high pass on it, and for example, just like we just low passed a Reese, we could stack another Reese of which we really like the top end on top of that, and we can just take the low end off so they won't conflict together. So yeah, really convenient just to have these controls. Of course, you could also do that here in your EQ later, but I quite like that it's been put in the plugin. And then so the last two things that we have to pay attention to here are the bass and treble. These are basically just controls to up the bass frequencies or the upper frequencies. So in the case of, for example, this Fatboy Reese here, which sounds like this, we could say we want more bass here and we can increase that. Or we could say, hey, we don't actually want that much of the high end, let's take that down. Versus, so those are actually sort of more like shelf EQs, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but also very useful just to give it a little bit of fine tuning. And you'll see in the project that we've also been needing to do that because these sounds, most of them fill the entire frequency spectrum very well. And that's very cool for most of the song, but sometimes that's a little bit too much. And you can just dial it back with these knobs, which is very, very useful. All right, yeah, so that's the controls and some of the sounds from hardware bass. Let's just really quickly dive into Reesebass, and I'll show you why I've been referring to them as one plugin. They're not, they're two separate plugins. They have two separate prices, but they are essentially, they work the same. So for example, here I have this Reesebass, which is exactly the same setup, except it has another design, which I think this one looks phenomenal. I really love this. It looks so gnarly, and it looks like you're gonna make angry music, which is exactly what we're doing here. And it has pretty much the same functionalities. We have those buttons here, the exact same ones that we had. We have the ADSR, and it's actually just exactly the same. But the difference with Reesebass is that this is mostly focused on Reesebasses. So whereas the other one had leads and whomps and bass hits and percussion and all this other stuff, this one primarily has Reesebasses, and they are big, and there's many of them. So again, let's quickly run through some of my favorites. And we got some of the more old school ones in there as well. Some really distorted ones, which I love. All sorts of other varieties like this one, this one, this one, this one. Spicy. And one of my personal favorites. Oh, it's so crunchy. All right, so that's sort of the contents of both of these plugins. Now let's dive into why these are so good. Because you could argue, well, this is cool, but why would I pay for a plugin if I can just use Vital or whatever synth I already have and just make my own sounds? And that's a very valid argument. But likely, unless you've been into music production for quite a long time and you've been like pretty sound design heavy, you're going to struggle to make things that are as good as this. And even if you do, it's going to take you a long amount of time. And for that, I want to just really quickly jump into some of these sounds. So earlier we were talking about this bass hit right here. What I want to do is I want to kind of show you what this looks like. So first of all, let's put an EQ on it and also a spectrum analyzer. You can see that this sound is really full. It's not really missing anything important anywhere on the frequency spectrum that you would want for a bass hit. You can see that it's very full, except for maybe between the 100 and a couple 100 hertz area, which is good because it won't conflict with some of the lower, Reese's and stuff that you're going to be using. So that's actually perfect. That's thought about. Then also, what you can notice is normally what you would do is you would make something like this with a crazy wave table, maybe something spectral, and that would automatically mean that the sub isn't very good, and you'd have to low cut it and put your own Reese or sub or whatever under it. You don't have to do that with this because look, let's have a look at this. We have a stable, pure sine sub under here. That actually goes for all of the sounds here. They've all already been layered with the appropriate subs, so you don't have to do that anymore. So this is the first project ever that I made where I'm not using a separate channel for a sub because I just don't need to. Everything has subs already, which is fantastic. Then also, what is absolutely beautiful is this sound, maybe not, but lots of sounds in there have already appropriately been layered. So when you come up in sound design with a sound and you think like, hey, that sounds really cool, you'll use it until you play your stuff on some bigger speakers, or if you have good ears, you'll hear it immediately that it needs to be beefed up. You'll need to make a couple of different layers to it. Maybe a compressed upper layer, you know, for these 5K plus area. Then you need to probably have one that uses slightly different wavetables, and then you'll want a mono and a stereo version sometimes of that. Like in complicated, bigger lead sounds or basses, you can end up having up to 5 layers just for one sound to make it sound full and good in the mix, and to make sure that it has the right distribution between mono compatibility and sounding good in stereo. All of that has been done already to these sounds. These sounds are not just someone who fiddled around in Serum. This is meticulous pasting of layers together and really thinking about what a sound needs and how it fits into any mix. And then the collective result of multiple layers, I think in most cases, has become one sample that's playable through the synthesizer. So you don't need anything. You plug it in, you play, you don't need to compress it, no parallel compression, no weird extra saturation that you need to do. You don't need to run it through a vocoder to give it extra frequency contact. None of that crazy stuff. Is just there and it's ready to go. And you can see that as well if we put a imager on there. You can see that this bass hit you would want to be pretty mono, but you want it to have some stereo width because that sounds nice. If we play it, we can see that that's exactly what we got here. Stays relatively in the center, but is spread out. And now if we put a utility on here, we see that it's also mono compatible. If we just put this whole thing in mono, it still sounds good. And that's also rare. Oftentimes when you make something big like this, you will have some struggle making it mono compatible. But in this case, nope, still holds up. You literally never have to worry, is it fat enough? Is it wide enough? Is it big enough? Is it loud enough? No, you just use these sounds and you plug and play them. You can literally play them at minus nothing dB. You can just play them at 0. So, okay, so the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how ridiculously easy it is to create basically a drop pretty much with just this plugin. We're going to use mostly hardware bass, and I think like 1 or 2 times the Reesebass with basically no additional processing. Let's go. So yeah, in this tutorial, we're just going to do the drop real quick just to show you how powerful this synth is. But if you want to know way more in depth how the rest of the song, as you heard it before, was made, including the intro and the outro and everything that comes in between and after, and also sort of more, you know, how I layer things to just make it a little bit more my own, then you can go and get the full start to finish tutorial in the School of Drum and Bass, which right now is on special offer for just £1. But I'll tell you more about that somewhere later in the video. All right, so let's actually get started. I have some channels just here that I made, and I have some indicators here of where I want stuff to go from the just a template project that I have. And yeah, we got some space here for drums, for kick and a snare and hi-hat. We're all going to be using hardware bass for this. Yeah, and I've got just a synth group here with just a bunch of MIDI tracks that have hardware bass on there that we're just going to fill with sounds from the sampler, and we're not really going to do any post-processing, so we're just going to make a track, plug and play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste some standard kick MIDI here, just the simplest possible thing here, and I'm going to select a kick from hardware bass. There is actually drums in there. All the way at the bottom here, we got this kick long, which will do just nicely. Very strong, I love it. Now, what I like to do is, since all of these sounds are so fat, I'm going to do a tiny bit of parallel compression on the kick to make sure that it really punches through all the nasty stuff that we're about to build. So I'm going to split the signal into a dry part and a wet part. Basically, one of them is just a low end, and what I've done is I've accentuated the fundamental here, and then I've got a parallel compression part that's just accentuating some of the really lovely high frequencies that Erb N Dub has put into this kick. Let's do the same for the snare. We're going to grab a snare here, and I really freaking dig this neuro type snare, this one. Oh yeah. And once again, we're just going to paste the most simple MIDI notes, which by the way, you can download them in the free presets below if you need them. It's going to sound like this together. Now this is optional, but I'm going to layer another snare just from another sample under it just because I like doing that. But actually this snare by itself is already powerful enough. Let's move on to the hi-hats, because hardware bass also has a hi-hat. So we're just going to pick one all the way down the bottom here. Let's pick this perk 3 and just insert a standard drum bass hi-hat MIDI here. And I think we can actually go in here and just turn up the gain of this. Cool. Okay, the next part is optional, but I'm actually going to layer some other hi-hats. Then I'm going to pan one side. I'm going to pan the hi-hats from hardware bass to the other side, and also like adding some crashes just so that we have a super strong drum loop. All together now. strong. Okay, and then let's just start filling that with sounds. Let's go into the first one, and we're gonna start out with a bass hit. I love putting bass hits on the beginning because it just makes it feel so strong and angry. So we're gonna be writing everything in the key of E just because that is easy. And earlier in the video, we already saw that this dimension was a really freaking cool one of that. So we're gonna do that. Let's put down the key of E. Cool. Then we need something to follow that up. I want a classic call and response pattern. So we're going to go to the next one, and we're just going to select another cool one. We're going to call this bass hit 2. I think I want it 3 times so that I get a pew, whoop, whoop, whoop. And so we're going to see like if we can find a cool wonk. Boom. So we're going to do that 2 times. Let's go. Nice. Then I want that to intersect with something really nasty, and I found this one, which probably is my favorite sound in the whole thing, which is this jump up sound, and I just love how this sounds. Oh yeah, let's go. And again, we just have to copy E because we really don't need to write any melody here, because who needs melody? Hey, so sorry to interrupt, but I just want to tell you something that you might find interesting. I think you're watching this video because you want to learn more about how to produce drum and bass, and if you are really taking that seriously, then you may want to have a look at our flagship membership, the School of Drum and Bass. School of Drum and Bass is my passion project. It's my mission to help the world produce more and better drum and bass, and it's a super affordable membership in which we cover everything you need to know, both about music production, but also specifically about producing drum and bass. And we have an incredible amount of videos about everything. We cover everything all the way from like how to use Ableton, all the way to sort of what is drum and bass and how does it work and what are the drum patterns and all that kind of stuff. Getting familiar with your synthesizer. We have hours of videos on how to use Serum. We have videos covering every single popular sound in drum and bass and how to make it and the theory behind how to make those sounds. We have professional mixing and mastering classes. We have start to finish mixing and mastering sessions where we do entire drops or entire songs. And very soon even we're going to be adding complete start to finish tracks where we literally make a track completely from scratch all the way to finishing it and take you along for the ride. This membership literally is the biggest and most extensive drum and bass learning resource on the planet right now. And the best thing is we got a deal right now where you can join your first 7 days for just £1. That's literally like $1.15 or €1.10 for more than 300 videos. And we're posting new super extensive videos at least every single week with new topics and more creative sound design stuff and more complex arrangement based tutorials as well. Basically everything that you'd ever want to know plus more. So if you want to go check that out, go to the link below or just go to howtodrumandbass.com and you'll find the School of Drum and Bass. All right, without further ado, let's move on to the rest of the video. Nice. Although I will say, I immediately hear that what's happening here is this one is, it's a little bit too bright. It's got a lot of top end. So we can do that in hardware bass. We can actually turn down the treble. That's better. And then I think for the sort of real call and response idea that's usually between Wompy and bass 80 elements and a Reese, it's time to introduce a Reese. And I think the first preset is already pretty fine. So let's program some notes. And what I want is I want them to overlap here as well because I kind of want them to flow up into each other. So we can go actually and we can select poly and this glide function that we were talking about earlier, and they will flow nicely into each other. So now we got this. Already starting to come together as a drop. All right, so let's actually copy that because I want that to happen twice, and then we're gonna add some variation here. And I want to change this one because I think the other two are super strong. The womp and that Reese is super nice. So what we can do for the bass hit is actually we can just keep it the same sound, but we can just make it shorter and have it occupy 2 notes. So let's do that. Perfect. And then let's see if we can find another cool sound for this little piece of MIDI right here to replace that really aggressive laser, because too much of the good stuff is not good. Wait, what is moose? Ooh, yeah. Okay, let's do that. Cool, so now the second part sounds like this. We could even add some variation in here. Just make it a tiny bit different. And just double this note. Sick. And let's maybe change these notes here as well into something more exciting. I heard this in my head, which I think is going to sound really cool. And then in yet another track, let's make it be followed by a big, nasty Reese, but just a different one. So let's call this something like Big Reese, and let's find a cool Reese for this. And after trying a bunch of them, I figured that this one is the coolest one. Program some notes, and I heard in my head that I wanted it to go up like this. Nice. A bit of reverb on it, and a phaser and a chorus just to make it a little bit sort of wider. Cool, and just like that, we actually have the start of a drop here. Look. And of course, he would go on to fine tune this. And the song that you heard before, there's a lot more stuff going on here because I went on. But just for the purposes of this video, I hope you saw how easy it is to make something pretty dope with just plug and play. Like you could see, I didn't do any editing. I didn't add any reverb, any compression, any crazy saturation or effects or nothing. All of it just sounds great. And so we did this in like 5 minutes. Imagine what you can do if you just had an hour. And so like I said, the whole track that you heard earlier, including all the other stuff that I've added to it, which has all actually just been stuff from this synth, minus like a couple of little drum layers and some noise. The rest of it was all from hardware bass and Reesebass. I made that in like 2 hours. So yeah, I think this plugin is just incredibly powerful for writing music, as you could have seen, and I really recommend that you go and give that a go if you're serious about writing music fast and you really want to accelerate your learning of arrangement and stuff and not worry so much about the sound design. Also, if you want the project file of this entire project, including everything that I've made before, if you want to have a look at, the other things that I added and how I took this further, that project file is available in the School of Drum and Bass, which you can find in the link below. Right, so now that we've seen everything that this plugin can do, or these two plugins can do, I think we have to answer a very important question, which is it worth your money? Because I know that as a music producer, you usually don't have that much money to spend, and you really want to sort of optimize for quality per euro, or per dollar, or whatever your currency is. So let's have a little chat about that. All right, so I do want to preface this by being completely transparent. This video was actually sponsored by Erb N Dub. He gave me the plugin so that I could make a video about it, but everything that I've said in this video, of course, is real, and I wouldn't have made the video this way if I wasn't so enthused about this plugin. Both of these plugins are on sale right now, and you can see the most updated price for whenever you're watching this video in the links below where I've linked the products. But at this time, both of these devices are 79 British pounds. Now, that is on face value, just as an absolute amount, quite a lot of money. I mean, if we look at, some of the cool plugins that you can buy on a sale, you won't often spend 80 euros. However, I think we need to look at it a little bit differently because, yes, sure, let's say that you got both of these and you would spend 160 pounds, right? That is quite a lot of money. But you would also spend that on a good synth. For example, if you want to buy Omnisphere, or if you want to buy Serum, or if you want to buy Phase Plant, those are even more expensive. And here's the thing. If you are a beginner, I think personally, the most important thing is that you start writing music as soon as possible. It doesn't have to be good music. You just need to start making stuff so that you'll get the skill, but also the confidence in doing that. And then so you can grow faster and faster and faster. And the best way to do that is to try to find the path of least resistance, to try and make it as simple for yourself as possible. And these plugins allow you to do that in such an insane way because they're basically just plug and play. You literally don't have to worry about the sound design. You don't really have to worry about layering. A lot of the more complex topics that we've talked about a little bit earlier, you don't have to worry about them. You can just write music. And that's also sort of like a pathway, a secret sort of shortcut almost to your creative genius, right? Because usually it takes years and years and years before you can express yourself in that way. But with these two, you would have over 400 mega high quality sounds that already belong in the drum and bass genre. So you can just go and write stuff. And I think if you compare that to, like, if you're a beginner or an intermediate, but like you're not an expert at sound design yet, then that saves you so much effort and so much, lowers the threshold of actually starting with something that I think that you could even be paying more for them and it would still be worth your money. I would almost say that it would be more important to get your hands on something like this, like a super high quality rumpler like these two instruments, than it would be to get it on any of the fancy synths, because this will just make you progress as a music producer so much faster with less learning curve. And then you can sort of work backwards. Then you know how to make music and you can make it more complicated for yourself instead of making it really complicated before you can make music. I think, yeah, if I have to sum it up, my personal recommendation is that no matter your budget, this is 100% worth your money if you care about writing music. And also if you feel like, the sound design stuff is just taking a lot of time away from you. That being said, I love sound design and I would say that I'm relatively good at it. And I still really enjoyed this because it's also refreshing to just have the freedom to not worry about that stuff. And so I will definitely be using them in the future. The tune that you just saw, I think I'm going to finish it and I'm actually going to release it. So that's going to be super fun. And I will very, very much so be using both of these in the future for some very epic songwriting. But wait, there's more! Erb N Dub has actually given me permission to give you guys almost 40% off, which is really awesome because it means that the plugins are not going to be 80 pounds, they're actually going to be on sale for 50, and that even works for both plugins, so you can even get both of them for 100 bucks rather than 160. So that is an absolutely massive discount. If you feel like you might be interested in that, or even if you just want to save it for later and you want just that discount code, all you have to do is register in the link below and I'll send it directly to your email. So yeah, I hope that you liked hearing about this. I was super excited to bring it to you, and I'm super excited for what both of these mean for the drum bass community, because if you guys get onto this, I feel like, you know, as a community of producers, we can grow and elevate a lot quicker, and those kinds of innovations are just really exciting for me because my personal mission is for there to be more super high quality drum bass in the world. That's why I started this channel, and Erb N Dub, you know, Peter has just done a fantastic job at contributing to that by making things easier for young producers and making things more awesome for older producers like myself. And I think that's where we're gonna end the video. If you want to check out these plugins, they are in the link below. I have a special link for you that goes right there. So if you're serious about making drum bass, this is definitely worth a super strong consideration. All right, with that, I would like to thank you for watching this video once again, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.